Studiometry has several powerful vendor and purchase order features. In this video, we'll go over how to create vendors, how to add vendor expenses to projects, creating purchase orders, and how to create summaries based on all of this information. You can create a new vendor in Studiometry by clicking on the plus button in the bottom left of the main window and selecting New Vendor. You'll see that this opens up the Edit Client window because in Studiometry, vendors are actually very similar to clients. Vendors can have contacts, projects, to-dos, and more associated with them. After creating this sample vendor, we can see that it appears in Studiometry's main window under the Clients and Projects, just with a different icon. If you don't want to mix your vendors and clients, you can just click on the gear in the bottom left of the main window and select View Settings. From here we have a few vendor-related options. You can enable or disable the vendors group in the main window, which will just show your vendors when selected. And you can also choose to include or exclude vendors from the Clients and Projects group and the drop-down Clients lists. So back to the vendor. Let's go in and quickly edit the contact information. So there we go, we have a vendor. Now let's add vendored expenses to other projects. What usually happens is you have a client with a project, and on that project you have an expense. You want to order the expense item from a vendor and then bill the client for the item. We'll start this process by going to the project that the expense will be billed to. Select the project, and then let's go to the project's Work and Expenses section. This is where all the project's expenses and hourly work will appear. We want to add a new billable expense to this project, so let's click the plus button. In the window that appears, we'll start by selecting the vendor. Doing this will link the item to our vendor, letting us access this item from either the vendor or the client. We can then enter information about this expense. Using the Calculate Total option, you can add in quantity and markup, letting you charge your client a different amount than what you're paying the vendor. We can see several pieces of useful information here. The vendor unit price is what you will pay per unit to the vendor. The billable unit price is what you will charge the client. The vendor total is the total cost of this item that will appear on the purchase order, and then the total amount below that is what will appear on your client's invoice. Let's hit OK to save this item. Now that we have a billable vendored item on the project, let's create a purchase order to send to the vendor. We can do this by going to the project's Reports section and then clicking on the plus button beneath the list. Reports are used to make several types of paperwork in Studiometry, including estimates and purchase orders. We can tell Studiometry that this is a purchase order by simply selecting a vendor to contact. This will then change the display of several items in this window. We can now set a date paid, we can mark the purchase order as paid, and we will also notice that the pre-markup amounts are going to be shown for the selected items. If we click View Report up top, we can then see with our purchase order template what will appear. Now these templates are all customizable, and you can learn how to do that in our separate invoice and report template tutorial. So now let's just save this purchase order. And we've created our first purchase order. Now this will be in the program under this project, and we can send it out to the vendor the same way you would send an invoice to a client in Studiometry. You can click on the preview to bring it up, and you can print it or email it or send it via Studiometry Cloud or however else that you send your invoices or report using Studiometry. So now that we've created a vendored item and sent out a purchase order, we'll want to get an overview of what's happening. If we go back to the original vendor and then click on the drop-down menu, we can see a list of the vendored items as well as their purchase orders. These lists can be printed or exported and can also be filtered by client or project as well as specific dates. If we want to get a little more advanced, we can create a custom summary of vendored items or purchase orders. To do this, select the Summaries menu and then select New Custom Summary. This brings up the Custom Summary window. This is a very powerful reporting feature in Studiometry that lets you group, sort, and filter almost any type of item in Studiometry into a summary. We have a whole separate training video explaining all the features in here, which you can access by clicking on the help icon here. For the purposes of this video, we'll just quickly go into the fact that you can now create custom summaries based on purchase orders by selecting it from the drop-down list here. Once that's selected, we can choose the grouping tiers for the summary, which is basically how we're going to group all of the purchase orders together. So for example, if we wanted to group together all of the purchase orders for a specific client, we would just click this plus button and then hit client. And then when we view the summary, it will show us all of the purchase orders grouped together by client. So here's our summary, and it includes the purchase order that we created earlier in this video. Now, these summaries can be filtered based on dates, specific items, or whatever else you'd like, and you can save all the settings into a summary preset to easily pull the summary back up in the future. Again, check out that custom summaries training video for more information on how to take advantage of this power feature. So that's it. Those are vendors and purchase orders in Studiometry. If you have any questions about this or anything else, please feel free to contact us at support.oranged.net.